Hey guys, so we finished project one and we talked a little bit about the basic structure of an HTML page. It's going to go through my Ducket digital copy. Here's the structure chapter. Just want to highlight a few basic things. I think this is a really nice example. This is showing an H1, an H2, and possibly an H3, although I think these are two headings that are the same, and then some paragraph text that can follow. And so this is kind of what we were doing last lecture, just kind of understanding the basics of an HTML document. There's the head portion of the document with the invisible information. Then there's the body portion of the document with the visible information. This is a nice diagram because it's wrapping everything. I'm just going to run through this really quickly. You guys have a copy of the textbook as well. By the way, there's probably a digital version of this textbook floating around. That's how I found this one. I just typed in Ducket PDF as search terms and it popped up. But having a physical copy isn't bad. But this shows how everything is kind of wrapped and interrelated. Okay. It's important to get the language right. And sometimes you'll hear me actually misuse words or language when I'm describing HTML. That's because those are just bad habits that go away very. It's hard for them to go away. So paragraph text, basic opening tag, okay? Basic closing tag. The real difference is this line right there, slash. Attributes, so you can add additional language or these sort of add-ons to tags, and that's what an attribute is. And so we'll be learning more about that later. Okay, so attributes though are add-ons to tags essentially. Body, head, title. I mean, this book is so beautiful. It really maps things out perfectly. Great definitions. It's all there. So if you don't have a copy of the book, get one as soon as possible. I also like how it talks about almost sort of keeping things organized here. Make sure you have a project folder. Those project folders should be inside of a course folder so that you can find things. And when you're doing web development projects down the road, you're going to realize how important it is for things to sort of be in the same location. When you start sprawling out your web development or web projects into multiple different locations, trust me, you're not doing yourself any favor, because assets or PDFs or images that you need your HTML document to have access to, they inadvertently get deleted or lost. But when you have everything in one project folder, it makes it really easy to keep track of. We did this exercise. This was project 0, right? Just to kind of get started. Text. Text is pretty self-explanatory because we have paragraph text, of course, and then we have these headers, these headings, 1 through 6. I rarely actually even use an H tag beyond an H3. So H4, H5, and H6, it gets a little bit ridiculous, but it even shows how these things render on the page. This book is so clear. Paragraphs, that's your bread and butter. Using bold and italic, that's bread and butter as well. We covered all of this last time. So you should be in a pretty good place. I think that the real big thing that you really needed to have done in order to prepare properly for today is you need a precedent, and you need an idea of how you want to express yourself or your CV or resume defining yourself 5-10 years down the road. So what kind of education do you want to have? What kind of degrees do you want to have? Where do you want to go to pursue those degrees? Dream big. What kind of job titles do you think you want? What kind of record of creative accomplishment would you like to have? And so that being said, we're going to be thinking about that larger picture, but we are going to be thinking about these smaller items. And for this particular project too, we are going to be focused on lists. And actually, whoops, actually just loaded up wrong project folder. So within my web folder, I'm going to go to project 2. I have a PDF there that we can bring up. So we're going to be thinking about lists and links. That's more bread and butter business, trust me, with HTML. Really important stuff. We also need to set up our file. And so my advice would be, if you get, when you have brackets open, this is where we left off last time, right? Well, we can come up here to File, Save As, and then we can place that in our new project 2, a version of that in our new project 2 folder, except instead of it saying index-1, we're going to say index-2 because this is project 2. Okay. And so yeah, there's project 2 folder. It's going to go in here. It's not going to overwrite anything. So I'm going to save it. Okay. So now we're set to go. The real big thing I need to do is I need to look at my laundry list on the project PDF. So here's the project 2 PDF. There's a laundry list right here. Okay. And so I really do want you guys to at least try doing all of these things. Okay. Even if it's not, you can find a way to make these things pertinent to your CV or resume. So for example, let's see, an unordered list where it just has the dots. Those could be technical skills that you have. So if you're a designer and you're trying to put together a CV or a resume, the first thing that a marketing manager is going to want to know is A, how many years experience do you have? And B, what kind of software do you know? Do you know Adobe Illustrator? Do you know Adobe InDesign? And so that's an example of how a list could be used on an HTML resume. It gets much more complicated because maybe if you're making a nested list, you could say, I know Adobe applications. And then under, when the nested list kind of flanks out a bit, you can mention Illustrator, InDesign, whatever, Photoshop. But maybe you also know 3D modeling software or animation software or something a little bit more advanced. So that might be a separate list. I mean, anyway, I'm just kind of dreaming of the possibilities as to how a list could be useful for a CV or a resume. Okay. Even like, if you list a job that you had with an H2 or an H3, and then you have some brief description text, and that would be paragraph text, right? And then below that, you can maybe list some things or some job responsibilities that you had. That maybe could be an ordered list. You could use links to actually link to the job site. So for example, maybe you actually worked at the marketing office at Dene College. And so you could actually create a link, an external link so when the user clicks on it, boom, they would actually be directed. A new page would pop up and they would be directed to that marketing page at Dene College so that you can start connecting those dots. We covered all this. You guys know the drill. I don't think I need to go over that again, although I do believe it's very important. Right now, we're here. Okay, so you can see how fast this semester or this course goes. This is a very kind of simple, if you ask me, this isn't going to take long. I always think, HTML really is not very complicated. Applying it takes some time because learning the HTML, guys, it's so easy. The real difficult thing to do is figuring out how to apply it to a project. Your long-term or big kahuna project in this course is to create a CV or a resume using HTML. And so how are you going to, as I just discussed, how are you going to apply an ordered list, an unordered list, maybe a definition list? Maybe that's something that you may or may not need, but this is an example. The nested list is actually a little more complicated, but it's a lot of fun too. But you really have to be very, very meticulous and detailed with your code. All right. So let's start there. Um, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the edit function here so that maybe I can come in here and grab some of this code. I don't know if you guys have noticed this about me, but I do like to copy and paste quite a bit. Sometimes you will get an error though. That's what I've noticed. Sometimes things don't translate exactly as they should. So be forewarned about that, okay? Uh, just because I'm not going to copy and paste right now. I don't feel like copying and pasting. So I'm going to create an ordered list. O-L, oops, opening tag. And then this is automatically going to create the closing tag. I actually think the closing tag should be below so that I can see things a little bit more clearly. But you can pile everything onto one line like this, but I would not suggest doing that. Then we need a couple list items. So OL stands for ordered list. Then we need a couple list items. It's trying to complete the code for me, which I kind of appreciate, but sort of resent as well. I guess you guys will have to decide on your own how you prefer things to go. Let's say, I'm just having fun here. Let's make a grocery list. Pickles, bread. Let's make sure it's working too. So it should be good. I'm going to get rid of some of these things. Still confused why that is not working. Remember that was happening last time and it was driving us crazy. Just for fun, let's just delete all that. It's still throwing that error even when I delete everything. That's really odd. Try to put it back. There, now it's not throwing the error. Yeah, again, sometimes the software can be a little finicky. Oh well, save it. And I'm just gonna have some fun and make some quick list items here. But remember, this can be like job responsibilities that you had. In fact, we'll migrate the list in that direction here in a second. Okay. So I need more list items though, and I'm going to work smarter instead of harder. So I'm just going to do some cut and paste. Jelly. Ooh, garlic. Thinking about things I need to pick up at the grocery store. Steak. Lemons. Now let's hit Command S. Now let's come over here and see how it looks. Oops. Looks like I'm going to have to open this guy up again, but I can do that really easily. You know why? Because I know exactly where the file is. It's in project 2, right here, index-2, open with Google Chrome. Here it is. So here's that H1, and here's the list that I'm currently mapping out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not putting any numbers over here. So you can see that's what really makes an ordered list ordered. Okay. Now let's go back to our PDF. See what we need to do next. An unordered list is specified by the UL with this corresponding LI tag. We've already got the LIs. All we have to do is change this O to a U. Save it. Come over here. Hit refresh. Now all those numbers have disappeared and it's just the dots. So that really, right there, that example that I just gave you illustrates the difference between an ordered list and an unordered list. Easy peasy, okay? And in my opinion, this could be applied to job responsibilities. So let's just go. So, if you're trying to show your boss what you were doing at a previous job, maybe some of these things would be applicable. Right? Remember, these aren't things that you necessarily did. We're dreaming of your future right now. Are you going to be a marketing director? Do you want to be a professor? Do you just want to own your own design firm? Or usually, if you do want to own your own design firm, you still work with other folks or you're mentored by other folks. And sometimes, the kind of people that you work with, they really help to define who you end up being or what kind of designer you end up being down the road. So anyway, these are just examples of how this can be applied to your web project. Let's keep going down our laundry list. So we've covered ordered, we covered unordered. A definition list is just kind of fun. You know what I'm going to do? I do want to just kind of get this in here. And it's kind of funny trying to grab this stuff out. Let's see how well it works. I know I need it to be within the body portion of the document. I need the opening DL. That's why I'm getting the error, right? Let's see if that'll fix things. There we go. Looks a little funny, right? But we're going to clean it up just a hair. And I do kind of like to indent things just so that I can see. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not. I'll leave that up to you guys. But usually there is a nice kind of bell curve that starts to develop. Let's see how it looks. So save, refresh. There it is. And you can kind of see how it was indented over. So that might be useful for what you're doing here, okay? Okay, let's see what else we got on our list here. Nested lists. I mean, you guys, this stuff is, you can get pretty complicated. Look at, there's an ordered list with an opening and a closing. Yeah, I'll zoom in a little bit for you. Then there's a list item. And then before that list item closes out, look, an unordered list, a new list appears. And it's nested into that guy because here's the opening and here's the closing. So this list is nested into that list item. The easier way to do this, if you ask me, is to take like, let's actually use this as an example. Start fresh down here. Except I'm gonna simplify this and call it A, B, C, D, and E. Okay. So it's not quite as interesting now, but I'm trying to simplify it just so I can try this. Refresh. So A, B, C, D, E. And that's an unordered list. Now let's copy this whole thing. Except I want it to be just 2 items. I'm gonna make it much more brief. I'm gonna call this 1 and 2, and I'm gonna make this an ordered list. Now I just plugged it in here so I can modify it, but I'm gonna copy it and I'm gonna delete it. And now I'm gonna put it right there. Actually, I'm gonna put it after B, because remember, we're gonna nest this guy into another list item. Okay. So interesting. There we go. Now, when you start indenting things, you can see how it can kind of, in all honesty, just make things more clear to you. See that? Now we can see that this ordered list is nested into that list item. Because here's the opening. And here's the closing for list item B. Let's see if it's working. Let's test it. There it is. It's a little bit funny because it automatically plugged in the 1 and the 2. And of course it's 1 and 2. So let's change that. It's freaking me out a little bit. Let's call this one red and green. Because I guess I'm hungry. Refresh. So there we go. That is a nested list right there. And I'm sure that you can figure out a way to make it applicable. For example, going back to the previous subject I was talking about, what about Adobe software? And then you're going to come down here and say Photoshop. Illustrator. Oops. I need to make another list item because you need InDesign in here, right? And I am really just failing at typing today. That's how errors occur, guys. Save, refresh. So now Adobe software, 1, 2, 3, Photoshop, some typing error there, Illustrator and InDesign. Very, very simple stuff, but fun stuff. Remember, your goal is to use this information that I'm giving you to create a CV or a resume that really represents yourself in 5 or 10 years, and all the skills and degrees and jobs and experiences that you have that really make yourself a marketable asset or individual or personality out there. Okay, it's something I talk about constantly, and I think it's very, very important. I believe, when I'm talking to you guys or mentoring to you all about art and design, I'm trying to put it into a context of it being a career. And sometimes it's a little easier to do, definitely, when you're talking about design, because there's a lot of intent that you're entering a commercial field. But make no mistake about it, if you're a professional artist, unless you're independently wealthy, even when you're a visual artist, you are still working in a capitalistic commercial environment. You may need to sell paintings. You may need to figure out how to monetize your creative skills into something. And that's why a website can be very, very handy to do that, because it will extend your reach to the world if you do it right. Okay. I think that's, I'm going to double check the PDF and make sure I've covered everything I want to cover regarding lists. Okay, but I think that's pretty good. And you guys can see that that's pretty darn easy. It's really not rocket science. The fun part is figuring out how to apply it. Okay, so links are really, really important. A lot of it has to do with user experience. I'll give you guys an example. Let's go back to my website really quickly. All these different menu links, they're internal links, okay? They're going to internal pages like about.html. All of the links are actually inside of my web project folder. Again, if I click on about, it's a little bit different in WordPress, but it's going to an about page that is in my own project folder, okay? Sometimes, just for user experience, I want things to open up in a new tab. Watch what happens. I have my CV resume here, which you guys are working on your own. But if I also want folks to have a PDF copy, like let's say someone wants to hire me to do something, or they want to commission me, or who knows why they would want to see print out my CV. I want to give them a beautiful PDF of it. So it says PDF of CV up here. I can click on that. Notice what happens up here. Okay. When I click on that link, a new tab shows up. And so I don't want the user being taken out of my website. The new tab shows up with the CV. Okay. That is an example of a new window link right here. And I remember we were talking about attributes, right? So look at the target equals blank attribute right there, right? So you can also link to external sites. I'm trying to think of I don't really have that happening on my website. Maybe I should, or actually there is a circumstance where that might be happening. Hold the phone, guys. I think actually it does. Look, in my biography, I make this text right here. It's actually a link. And look what happens again. I don't want the user to leave my website, but they can click on this University of New Mexico link. And it's a little bit hidden there, but it is there. It opens up a new tab and it goes to the architecture school where I went. And so, yeah, that's useful for SEO. You're trying to embed as much information into your HTML pages as possible because Google and the search engine applications, they're basically crawling your website looking for data to make your website searchable or relevant. The more information that you can give them, the better off you're going to be. Okay. And so it does that with University of New Mexico, and I believe it does that with San Francisco Art Institute as well. So there it is. It goes to the SFAI webpage. And again, it opened it up in a new tab. Okay. This is fun. This is specific location links. A good example of this was when I was working at ENMU. And I'm going to actually see if I can find that. Hold the phone 1 second. This is a website I worked on years ago. It's changed a little bit because websites do change, but I'm willing to bet that there is a page that is still very, very similar. So if I go to academics, here we go, majors and degree programs. Let's click on undergraduate. Those degrees, yeah. Hmm. Interesting. So they don't have it anymore, but there used to be like letters A through Z or whatever, and you could click on like instead of scrolling all the way to like the bottom of the page, there was an option to click on the letter like M, for example, and it would cruise down to majors that start with M. And that was really useful for this particular page, I thought. I guess whoever the webmaster is, they've made a change. But this still kind of illustrates my point where this is such a long list. And sometimes the user doesn't want to like scroll too much, and you can make things a little easier by making in-page links. So for example, clicking on the letter M, and then it would cruise down to the letter, all the majors down here that start with the letter M. So I've given you guys on the PDF, there's an example of this that's a little bit more nerdy, but it definitely works. I think I've mentioned this many times at this point, but I love movies. Alien is one of my favorite movies ever. And it's not a real complicated example, but let's see if we can grab all this code and plop it down. Grab this too, right? Let's see if this works. Save it. Refresh. So here are these top. So I mean, this is a very short list, obviously, but let's say there are just tons and tons of movies, and I have a very abbreviated list at the top, and it's not working. I have a better idea. It's actually a good opportunity to introduce something that you'll see for this project or future projects. But I have actually created HTML notes. I'm going to be including these so you can kind of see, look at all this. This is showing all the links in particular, linking to another site, yada, yada, yada. Here it is right here. It's working on this one. It's probably because when I copy and pasted, it just didn't turn out as I thought. But I can come over here and I can do it again. I can open that file in brackets. And here's the code right here. Yep. Copy. Now I'm going to go to index.2. I'm going to delete all of this because it wasn't working, right? Not the body tag. If you delete that body tag, you're going to run into a wall. Save it. Let's try it again. Refresh. Fiction. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on here. You guys can see the trials and tribulations of HTML live right now. Essentially how it works is you can kind of see, instead of there being a specific web address, these are the locations. So that hashtag Pulp Fiction, you can kind of see I've provided an ID for this location on the web page. And so when I click on that link, it automatically takes me here. And it's really funny, like it's working here, right? You can kind of see if I click on Pulp Fiction, it's going to take me to that ID, Pulp Fiction, boom. And if I want to go back to the top, boom, right? Okay. And so I am going to, if I don't include those notes on project 2, I will include them for like project 3 and 4 and 5, because as you can see, we start to work with images, and there are other things I just kind of want to show you. Let's go back to our PDF. So although me copying and pasting this over for some reason wasn't working, I think you guys get the gist of how it works. It might require some trial and error again. I mean, you guys, that's kind of what web design is. It's a lot of trial and error with a little bit of frustration peppered in. And if you do get to a point where you're extremely frustrated, I would advise that you just take a walk. You take a walk around the block or take your usual path for 30 minutes, and then you can come back to it feeling refreshed. So links are pretty self-explanatory. You want to link to external sites. Sometimes you want to link to internal pages. You can even see the difference between an external URL and an internal URL, okay? Because this is linking to a place in your project folder. This is linking to something else like the University of New Mexico or San Francisco Art Institute or DeNaCollege.edu. There are also email links, which are kind of fun. I believe if I come over here's that code, email. Okay, so if I click on this, in theory, it should bring up my default email application. That's a little bit old school, but it's definitely applicable to a CV resume, right? So watch, I clicked on that, and it's automatically going to bring up my default email application. And it's also including the email dude@gmail.com that I included on the code. Let's investigate that code really quickly. It's mail to dude@gmail.com. And then here's that text, email the dude. Kind of cool, huh? That's what's happening right there. That's plenty. Yeah. And so remember, your goal is to put this into some sort of a context that makes sense for your CV or resume. I'm sure that each of you can find a way, right? Thank you, and I'll see you for project 3.